Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. He often had nightmares. He wakes up in the night in a cold sweat. Something is troubling him. The boy gets out of bed, goes to the stairwell, looks around. No one's there. He walks down the stairs. It's business as usual. And when he gets outside, he sees that there's been an apocalypse. Everything's destroyed. The houses have been turned into piles of bricks. There's no one on the street. There's someone peeking around the corner. With some sixth sense, the boy realizes it's not a person. He jumps out of his seat and runs back into the entryway. But now there are only stairs. There are no walls. The boy screams, and at that moment he wakes up. "Son, what's wrong?" Mom's awake too. It was just a bad dream. He was still sitting on the bed, confused. It seemed like everything he'd just seen was true. "Come on, get to bed for school tomorrow," the woman muttered. "Okay." The boy agreed with her, although he didn't really want to do it. He went back to bed, fell asleep, and the dream seemed to go on. It was scary, but he couldn't wake up. The next day, Christopher got up in the morning, exhausted. He couldn't pull himself together. He really wanted to sleep, but the kid went to school anyway. He knew if he didn't, his parents wouldn't be happy. The family lived in an ordinary town. Christopher had a sister. The birth father was long gone. His mother lived with her new husband, who was the boy's stepmother. "Mom, are we going to take a little longer walk with the boys tonight?" asked the son in the evening. "What's the matter?" The woman looked at him. "Oh," he just shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know what to say. All weekend, please, but not during the week." The woman was stern. "All right, we all don't like these lectures." He went out to the yard, told his friends that it wasn't going to work out today. They were meeting at one of the houses in their neighborhood. The young people there had taken over the basement. Now, when they studied already in the 8th grade, they couldn't smoke and drink beer. But back then, they had to walk around a lot longer to get the air out. "Then we'll sit here," showed Stephen to a bench in the yard. Great. No one argued with him. Why go anywhere when everyone lives nearby? There was no ringleader in the group. Everyone was on an equal footing. It was the 90s, so young people did what they could. "We'd go out on the weekend," the man would say. Of course, it was a favorite. If we were lucky, guys from another neighborhood would come over. We could wave. Stephen said, "Yeah, we'd have to get ready." Christopher remembered the last time the opponents had brass knuckles. All they could come up with was a rock for insulation. "Don't teach a scientist," his comrade told him. In those years, young people did not think of anything else. There was practically nowhere to go. All the circles ended in the afternoon, and in the evening the boys were left to themselves. They gathered together, discussed a plan of action, took money somewhere, bought cheap alcohol, drank it at construction sites or abandoned. "Hey, Christopher." One day, an older comrade came up to the guy. "Hi." Looked at him. It was Rick. He graduated 2 years ago, and now he was looking for intrepid youngsters. "Come on, let's step back. We need to talk." He knew Christopher was not a shy guy and could do a lot of things. Christopher looked back at his friends and followed his older comrade. Of course, it was a little scary because he knew what Rick was doing, but it was embarrassing in front of his friends if he didn't go. The young men rounded the corner of the building, and Rick looked around and handed Christopher 2 matchboxes. "What are these?" The boy did not understand then. "You don't know?" Rick winked at him. "I guess," Christopher told him. "Well, if you guess, you probably know what to do with it," smirked the older man. Roughly, Christopher quickly stashed what he had just been handed in his pocket. "You hand it over, you'll get some good money." There was a piece of paper that said who to hand it all over to. Okay, the boy walked back towards the school. He didn't look back at Rick. At first it was very scary, because Christopher was afraid that someone would see or find out what he was doing. But once, twice, 3 times, and then he felt at ease, because not only did he have good money, but he also hung around in circles with the older guys. Knew if anybody took offense, you could just tell them, and they'd stand up for him. "Christopher, are you coming or not?" Stephen called out to him, but he had to wait for the bell to ring and hand over what was in his pocket. "Wait a minute," the young man waved him away. "Listen, tell me, why have you been so different lately?" A friend came up to him. "Let me tell you everything later. It's just not the right time." The guy didn't want to share information with anyone because he was afraid that everything would come out. Over the weekend, they met up with Rick again. He handed him some matchbooks. "There's more than enough here." Christopher looked at the one. "I won't be in for a while, so if they ask, you can sell it," said Rick to him. "I hear you." They parted ways. Christopher came home. There were 2 boxes in his pocket. They were straight up igniting his pants all the way through. The boy knew that if his mother found these in his pants, nothing good would come of it. In the evening, he went for a walk. He met Stephen in the yard. "Listen, friend, I have something very important to tell you." Christopher came up to him. "Go ahead." A friend was always willing to listen. "Do you remember Rick, who approached me at school?" he asked him. "Of course I remember," smiled Stephen. So Christopher began to tell him what was going on. "Do you want something from me?" Stephen stood. He was in complete shock. He had no idea that there was such a thing going on at the school. "Here, you can hide this at your house or something." He took the boxes out of his pocket. Wow, he opened one of them. "Close it, or you'll wake up." He kept looking around. He was afraid that someone might see them. "Listen, why don't we try it?" Stephen smiled. "I don't even know." "Then we'd have to invest the money," the guy shrugged. "All right, let's lay down." "It's not that expensive," said his friend. That afternoon, a group of guys gathered in their den. In theory, they knew how it was done, so it wasn't anything complicated. Christopher took a drag. He didn't feel anything like that. It even felt to him like normal cigarettes. Afterward, when the boys went home, they felt a little dizzy. And no matter what anyone says now, it seemed ridiculous. The boy came home, saying something, giggling. The mother suspected something wrong. She began to question her son, but he remained silent, said nothing. Then the next day, the woman called a policeman she knew and shared her suspicions with him. He offered to hold a preventive conversation on the topic that was worrying all parents now. But he also said that the mother should not warn anyone. Let the son not know, he would think it was a stranger to no one. And so it was agreed. In the evening, when Christopher came home, they had a policeman sitting in the kitchen. "Hello." I looked at him, and his knees were shaking. He now thought he had done the right thing when he gave Stephen the box. Passing Christopher, "I am waiting for you," the man told him. Christopher walked into the kitchen, sat down across from him. He didn't look up. He was really scared that he was about to start talking, and his mom and everyone else would find out what he was doing. "So, young man from the school has received a signal that you are doing the wrong things, and you need to have a preventive conversation with you. So here I am," said the man. Was he writing something in his notebook? "I didn't do anything like that," Christopher began to mumble. But then I thought, the more you get lost, the more they'll think of you. So he shut up. "I'm not accusing you of anything yet," the man in uniform smirked. "Then why did you come?" The boy didn't understand. The mother stood near him and saw that her son was not comfortable. "I told you, it's a preventive conversation. Everyone knows that there are a lot of illegal substances now. They are distributed among school children and other residents of our city. I just want you to know that if you suddenly get into a company where they do it, or even worse, start using or distributing, then nothing good awaits you in the future," said the policeman. I understood. Christopher shook his head. He really understood that it was very dangerous, and if he kept doing it, someone would find out or he would get caught. 2 days later, when they met Rick, we all told him so. And no amount of money, no amount of persuasion could make him keep doing it now. The boy wanted to finish 9 grades and leave school. But in the past, all parents were in favor of their child necessarily completing a full school course, that is, 11 grades, and then go to good educational institutions. No, my dear you study all the years, you will get a certificate. And when you turn 18, then, please, decide everything for yourself and do what you want, his mother told him. But why waste 2 years? Christopher didn't understand. I think you will waste them that way if you even leave school. The mother was worried about her son. Now that Christopher had his own opinions, he often argued with his mother because their views were very different from each other. The young man was fascinated by computer technology. He was constantly collecting, disassembling, looking at how everything is organized, trying to do something new. When he was in his senior year of high school, he already realized that he could assemble and disassemble a computer, as well as fix it. So maybe that's what you'll do with your life, his mother told him. I haven't decided yet, he answered her. It's just that I see you're good at it. She stood and watched her son at the table as he deftly went through the parts and put one to the other. Yes, okay, I'll think about it, he promised his mother. He only had one friend left at school now. That was Stephen. Almost everyone from the yard had moved away. They'd gone to school. They talked lightly about the future, how and what would happen. Now we'll finish school and they'll take us to the army, Christopher said. So he served normally. We'll come back, then we'll start working, said Stephen. That's what they decided. After that, they started to think of something to do. There were a lot of ideas, but it was all wrong. They needed money for one thing and money to start another. They also needed equipment to buy. Then the guys threw some plans on a sheet of paper and decided to think about it later. And suddenly something would change, and they would have a down payment for their startup. And now it was time for exams, which were easily passed because the guys never had any problems with their studies. Only graduation was ahead. On this festive day, the mother was very worried. The suit was the dinner. She had the dress ready. And here her son is standing at the graduation. He is given a certificate. Now the school principal says farewell words that they are releasing the guys into free sailing, almost right before graduation. Christopher turned 18, so it was not far off to receive a summons to the military enlistment office. And it came. Now the guy had to pass a medical examination and then go to the army. At least they would send him somewhere not far away, said the mother, who was upset for the child. Don't worry as if I'm still a kid, Christopher told her. And you will always be little to me. His mother hugged him. Even though he didn't like all that tenderness, he didn't push her away. The day came when the guy was sent off to the army. Some acquaintances and friends gathered, and the next day he was on his way to the station. Son, right, his mother said to him and cried. I will, he told her, smiled, and entered the car. Christopher was not at all worried. It was not the first time he had encountered difficulties. He even wanted to know what would happen next, where he would arrive, who would meet him, and how things would be. Everything went well, just as the mother wanted. The son was sent not so far from home. When the oath was administered, she just took the 4:00 bus, and she was already at the location where Christopher was serving. Yes, at first it was difficult for the boy. He had to get into a new team. Everyone has their own habits, their own opinions. And of course, arguments with the old employees. Nobody canceled that. After 6 months of service, everything was normal. Christopher continued to serve. It was already time for demobilization. He missed home very much. When he went there, he was even worried. He went to a flower store, bought a bouquet for his mom. Hello, dear. A woman hugged him at the entrance. Mom, I'm so tired and I miss you. I want something homemade. He told her. Sure enough. Now off she went to the kitchen. That day and the next few were wonderful. I liked everything here. He remembered a lot of things, looking out the window. They used to run with their friends in this yard. And another mom, do you know where Stephen is now? He asked the woman after a week at home. How would I know? I don't keep track of him. Did she look at him? What so aggressively? Didn't understand the woman's mood. Nothing. She went to the kitchen. In fact, the woman had already gone to work for a day and thought that the son does nothing, but just sits at home. And yet the young man followed her into the kitchen. Christopher, you've been sitting at home for over a week now. Why don't you get a job somewhere? And she looked at him seriously. What are you starting? Get a job when you need one. He shook his head, realizing that everything was starting over. And when that time would come, she wondered. Mom, don't start. He went back to the room. They were not interested. The young man didn't want to work in a factory or for some uncle. He had a lot of ideas. He wanted to do his own thing. It was necessary to find Stephen because Christopher was sure that the two of them could do a lot of things together. The next day, the young man got ready. He decided to go to Stephen, and if he couldn't find him, at least ask his parents where he was. Hello. He arrived at his friend's house. Oh, Christopher, hello. Stephen's mom hugged him. Where's my best friend? He asked her. And he went to the village to help his grandmother, said the landlady. And when will he be home? He asked. I don't even know. And you go to his place, you'll have a rest there. His mother dictated the address where his grandmother lived. Thank you. Christopher didn't mind seeing his friend. He went straight from here to the train station. He didn't bother to warn his mother. An adult already does what he wants. The trip only took about an hour. Then it was a few minutes' walk to the right house, and here the boy is already knocking on the window. He saw his friend, who pulled back the curtains, looked, and as if he could not believe that a friend had come to see him. What are you looking at? Open up. Christopher laughed. No way. Then Stephen shouted and disappeared through the window. A few seconds later, the gate opened, and a guy came out. Didn't you recognize me? Christopher asked his comrade. They hugged each other. How can you recognize how long we have not seen each other? The young man was happy. Invite me into the house, asked Christopher. Sure, let's go. Grandma just baked pies. They went into the yard and then into the house. They sat down at the table. The woman poured them tea, put in the center huge dishes with pies, wished them a pleasant appetite, and went behind a curtain into another room. Well, how's it going? Tell me. Christopher took a bite of the cake. Everything's fine. I'm waiting for you. Lots of plans. Stephen smiled. Well, here I am. Christopher spread his arms out. All right, let's get started. We just need to think about housing. With my parents do not want to live like that, complained Comrade. Great, and I wanted to talk to you about it. Christopher rejoiced. After all, two to rent a place is easier than one. Ugh, and I thought I could not afford it. Stephen exhaled. No, everything will be fine, assured his friend. That was the deal. The friends decided to spend a few days here in the village and then go to the city and start doing something. I'm so glad we haven't lost touch, Christopher said as they drove back to the city. It's okay. Stephen shook his head. He remembered from his childhood what an inventor and initiator Christopher was. I hope so. The boy agreed with him. Christopher arrived home. He thought his mother was going to throw herself at him and start asking him where he had been, why he hadn't warned her. But nothing of the sort happened. Did you go for a walk? Was all she asked when the young man entered the apartment. Aha. He didn't say anything. He went into the room, took out a sports bag, and started packing. That's a long way to go. Mom walked in the same way. We're from Stephen and decided to rent an apartment, he told her. Great. As if the woman was even happy. She went back into the kitchen. But all the while he was standing in the hallway, thinking that his mom would at least come out to him. Aha, come on, shouted the one from the kitchen. He went to a friend, who had to ask an acquaintance who rented the apartment whether it is still there or already rented. Zdorova. Well, he asked Stephen. Everything is fine. The apartment is not yet rented, so you can move in right now, said the friend Christopher. Great. He smiled. They took some of Stephen's things and went to the place where they were going to live. After that, the friends sat down at the table to talk about what they wanted to do now. The guys came up with a very good idea with discs and audio cassettes. They were now calculating what they would need. Knowing that my uncle has a basement space, I don't think he needs it. We'll have to ask, Stephen said. If this works out, we'll have very little cost, said Christopher to a friend. And it did work out for the boys. The uncle gave them this little space in the basement. They bought, copied equipment, discs, paper. Everything was gonna work out, everything. And somewhere he took an old computer. He said he gave it to them cheap, but with God. They opened up and began to place ads wherever they could. On the third day, they got a very large order. Guys, hello. A respectable man came to them. Hello. The guys didn't expect this. They thought it would be a one-off. But to do it all at once, I don't know if your work is good or bad, but I have a very urgent order. The customer looked at the surprised guys. Are you talking? Christopher was the first to speak. I have several 1,000 discs. They all need to be processed in 3 days. He said that a few 1,000. Christopher grinned and looked at the equipment they had. I'll give you an advance payment. Anything you say. Just do it, please, the man asked. It was obvious that the matter was urgent. Okay, just let's discuss some points. He looked at his friend Christopher, who was still silent. That's it. What do you say? The customer was in agreement. After that, Christopher explained to him what and how. Good, and here is the money he took out of his pocket. A solid sum put on the table. Bring the discs and see you in 3 days. Christopher said goodbye to him. Have you been making noise for 3 days? Stephen jumped on him. What's the big deal? He didn't understand. You can't do it in a week, especially with our equipment. The comrade almost cried. Calm down. He left us so much money for them. We'll buy a normal machine. Spoke Christopher with knowledge. And if we fail? Stephen did not believe in his own strength. It'll be okay. We'll get through this, Christopher promised him. I don't know. The friend doubted. From that moment on, they began to work hard. They decided to work both day and night. At first one would go out, the other would sleep, then they would switch. On the third day, they really had everything ready. The customer arrived. He was afraid that it would turn out like with the past performers. He had already given this order to others, but as time passed, when he arrived, he was simply told they couldn't do the job. Guys. He walked in without a greeting and looked at those who worked in this basement. Yes, hello. Come on in. Stephen was cheerful today because he realized that they had done a very difficult job. Did you make it in time? The man looked at them. Of course we did. I promised. Christopher stood up and pointed to the boxes that stood in the corner. First, the customer looked at everything, hummed, shook his head, and paid the rest of the money to the guys. And plus, he added a thank you for the speed. Bye. We'll definitely come to you again. He winked at the guys and called the workers to take the boxes away. Wow, Stephen looked at the money. There was enough here to pay several months' rent. And there was still a decent chunk left over. Well, let's get on with it. I held out my hand to him. Sure, laughed his friend and partner. Today the guys decided to relax a little, go to a cafe and celebrate the completion of a successful deal. Beer? Asked the bartender when they walked in. Thank you, nodded the guys and went to the table. Both of them were in high spirits. They sat and discussed further plans. Toward evening, more people started coming to the cafe. Soon there was not a single free seat left. At that moment, 2 girls entered the hall. They looked around since there were no seats, approached the bar. Wait, Stephen stopped them. He looked at the girls. He thought of something. It became interesting, who now he got up from the table and went to the bar. There he talked to the girls about something. They laughed, and then he and the guy came back to their table. Hi. They looked at Stephen. One took a seat next to the topic, and the other sat down with Stephen. Saw that there was no seat available for them. So that's why he offered to join us, the guy explained to his friend. I see. Until then, Stephen could not understand how it had happened so quickly. Introductions. I'm Sophia, and this is my girlfriend Camille, said one of the girls. Nice to meet you. You already know me. And this is my friend Stephen. Introduced him Christopher. Well, maybe we'll have a beer too. The girls looked at each other. Sure, we're having a party tonight. The friends told them about their deal. Wow, you could tell they were interested. After that, they went for a walk around the city, and when they said goodbye, the guys invited the girls to visit. They'd promised to come the very next day in the rented apartment of the guys. There were 4 people sitting in the kitchen. How about a game of cards and a couple on a couple? Stephen asked. Why not? I'm with Camille, said Christopher and winked at her. I agree. The girl smiled back and blushed. She liked the guy. Back then at the cafe, they were dealt the cards and the game began. Guys and girls were laughing, saying something. It was clear that Stephen Sophia also liked him. In the evening, the friends separated. Each went to see the girl home. When they came home, they shared their impressions. The next day after work, the company gathered again. It went on like this every night. Girls, why are we all going back and forth with you? Move in with us, said Stephen after 2 months of acquaintance. What if you don't mind? Camille was looking at Christopher. So Stephen and Sophia started living in one room, and Christopher and Camille in the other. At first, everything was very good, friends working together, girlfriends studying together, and doing everything at home together. But after 2 years of living together, the girls started telling their boyfriends to move out. Everyone wanted something different. We're gonna live like this for a long time. We need to start a family, Camille told Christopher in the room. You realize it's going to be a strain on our budget. Her boyfriend convinced her otherwise. I can't do that. Sophia doesn't want to either. The girl took offense. The guys went on about their business. But as time goes on, things change. And what they were doing was no longer in demand. Now orders were coming in, but they were many times less. Accordingly, the income from it was small. Once I got a call from a friend who lived in another city. It was not far away and it was many times smaller than where the guys lived and worked now. Hi. Christopher greeted him. Listen, I decided to call you because I know you're good at this. Started telling John why he was calling. But he didn't understand anything yet. Christopher decided to open a repair shop here. Computers, cell phones, other appliances. You're good at that. Spoken with enthusiasm, friend. So do I. What do you want? I'm starting to get a little more up to speed. Christopher. Come, we'll work together. We don't have anything like this yet. And people break things all the time. There was so much enthusiasm in the young man's voice, I'd have to think about it. Christopher asked for some time. Yes, of course. I can't stand you, agreed the friend. After this conversation, the guy thought about it. Yes, it was a great option to make money, but it was necessary to leave here in a small town. What to do? He didn't know. Camille, I need to talk to you, he said to the girl. Go ahead. She looked at him. Remember you said we should separate. I want to offer you an option. He told her everything that his friend had suggested to him, that he go to some backwater. She cringed. There you can rent an apartment cheaper, and the income will be decent. He persuaded the girl. I don't know. I don't want to. She almost stomped her feet. Well, think about it. I'll probably definitely go. He went to Stephen to tell him the same thing. His friend didn't support him either. He said that if he wanted to go, he could leave and he could stay here. Christopher didn't realize that he was the only one in his head thinking that everything would work out, and what difference did it make what city to live in. 2 weeks later, he called John, said that he had decided everything and would soon come to look for an apartment for him. The friend was happy, agreed and said he was looking forward to it. Christopher, I'm pregnant. In the evening, Camille surprised him. I'm glad. He smiled. What to do now? I wasn't going to go anywhere. She was almost crying. Why didn't you say so before? I thought we were together. He sat down in front of her. I don't. She shrugged her shoulders. Are you going to go? He looked her in the eyes. What to say now? She couldn't accept the thought. Stephen regretted that he would have to part with his friend, but the latter had already decided everything. They saw their friends off to the train station, but all for now. Come and visit, Christopher said and shook his friend's hand. The girls said goodbye too. John, as promised, rented them an apartment, so now the couple had already arrived there. They settled in quickly. Christopher and John started working, just as the friend had said they would. There were tons of people. Everyone had something broken, and they were carrying the workshop to them. The money was very good. Camille stayed home. She was getting ready to be a mother. What's there to do in this little town? Not even anywhere to go. The girl was always teaching. Nothing. Now you will give birth. Then we will find something to do, Christopher reassured her. He took care of Camille as best he could, bought what she asked for. He did almost everything himself. When the due date came, the girl went to the hospital. There were no problems. The labor went perfectly. 5 days later, the happy father met them at the hospital. Why don't you propose to me? Camille asked him one night. Why do you feel so bad? He looked at her in surprise. We have a child. It's time to become a family, she replied. No, I don't want to. Why do I need an extra stamp in my passport? He answered her easily. Then you don't love me. She folded her arms across her chest and turned away from him. Please don't start. He didn't like all these concerts. Right now, Camille was at home with the baby. Christopher was working. The daughter was already 5 years old when Camille started talking about the wedding again. Why are you bothering me with this proposal? The young man was annoyed. I want a wedding, she told him. I don't. He was getting even more annoyed. Then I'm going to leave. She gave him a wait and see look. What do you expect? That I'll talk you out of it or run out to buy a ring, he grinned. They'd been fighting a lot lately. Camille had been the one to stir it up. And now that she said she was leaving, Christopher didn't mind. That's it, I'm going to my mom's and you won't see the baby. She turned and walked away. What makes you think that? Was surprised by the young man. He realized that the girl was trying to hurt him. And what have you done for her? Camille stopped, realizing what had hurt him. Did you, Christopher, have a right to ask that question? From the moment she was born, he had sat by Evelyn's crib almost every night, putting her to bed. Then, when her teeth started teething, he rocked her in his arms. Then he took the girl to kindergarten, practiced, taught her to read, count, write. Camille at this time not only did not work anywhere, but she disappeared all day at the girlfriend's, which she had here appeared, or at the beauty parlor. All of this is my last word. She went into the bathroom and slammed the door. Christopher went to his daughter's room. He just wanted to talk to her. Of course, if there had been no Evelyn, this breakup would not have been so painful. Now the father walked over to Evelyn, beckoned her over and hugged her. Daddy, what's wrong? Why are you so sad? She asked him. Your mom and I had a fight and now she wants to take you away to Grandma's house. Don't worry, sometimes that happens between adults, but you and I will always be in touch. He pulled her even tighter against him. Good. The girl cried. She felt sorry for her daddy and mommy. The very next day, Camille with her belongings and daughter left. Christopher was at work at that moment. In the evening, when he came back and found no one, he felt very bad. He went down to the yard, went to the store, got himself a beer. Now he sat in the kitchen, poured the amber liquid into a glass and drank. There was nothing to be sad about except his daughter. He drank, felt very tired, got up and went to bed. No one was bothering him today. There was no need to go anywhere, to do anything. So he just closed his eyes and fell asleep. The young man began to live alone. It might have seemed difficult at first. You had to cook, go to work, clean. But soon he got used to it. Now he had a lot of free time. He began to work not only in the workshop, but also at home. "Hi," John greeted him at work. "How are you?" Christopher asked him. "I'm fine. Come and visit tonight." It was Saturday. John and his wife were going to stoke the bathhouse. The guy had long dreamed of a private house and had finished building it about 6 months ago. John was most proud of his bathhouse. It turned out to be big. That's where they gathered. Of course, there is nothing to do at home anyway. And you want to talk to someone. Christopher agreed. They had worked today and decided that they would go straight from here to the store and go to John. "What are we drinking?" The friend looked at Christopher. "Beer, what else do you drink in a bathhouse?" He was already putting glass bottles in the basket. "Great." The man agreed with him. They arrived while John's wife was cooking something in the house. The young men flooded the bathhouse, brought water and firewood, and decided that they would also make a kebab. Well, here came the treat. A girl came to the bathhouse. "Thank you, my dear." John sat his wife on his knee. "Now Jenna will also come," said the girl. "Good." Christopher winked at his host. It had been about 6 months since Camille had broken up with him, but Christopher didn't want to meet or date anyone yet. "Aha," he replied. Jenna burst in like a hurricane. She started talking from the door, laughing. "Let's get to know each other." "This is my friend Christopher," said to her John. "Hi." She smiled at him. Christopher did not like such animals, and the girl was not to his taste. All evening they talked. He even walked her home. But he couldn't say he wanted to keep talking to her. "Hi." He saw her the next day. A message from Jenna on social media writing. He told John at the time. "What is writing and who is interested in that one?" Jenna emotionally said the young man. "So answer," suggested his friend. "I don't want to." Christopher waved his head. "Okay, it's up to you." Did not pry into the affairs of a friend John. The next day, when Christopher was going to work, he again received the same message as yesterday from the girl. And again, he didn't react to it. And again, he didn't react to it. "How's it going?" a friend at work asked. "Nothing new." He shrugged. An hour later, Jenna came to their workshop. John had gone somewhere else, so as much as Christopher didn't want to, he had to approach the girl. "You can look at my phone." She handed him the device in her hand. Now he spun it around, pressed some buttons, realized she'd made up a reason to come over. It was just the sound. He gave her the phone back. "Thank you. How much do I owe you?" Jenna tried to make conversation. Not at all. The guy realized he hadn't done anything at all. "Why don't you want to communicate with me?" she asked directly. "Who told you that?" He wasn't looking at her, minding his own business, and I could see she wasn't going to leave. "Oh, Jenna, hi." "John's back." "Hi. Come visit tonight." She called them over to John. "Okay, what's the holiday?" asked the young man. "Nothing. We'll just sit around." She smiled. "It's Monday," said Christopher with a chuckle. "So?" The girl didn't understand. "Let's wait until the weekend then." Then said John, "Okay." She looked at Christopher one more time and went to your place. "She did." The guy guessed. "Yes, she did," Christopher said grudgingly. "What's wrong with her?" "She's a nice girl." His friend didn't understand. "That's it. I don't want to talk about it." Christopher got up and went to the store to buy something to eat. Okay, John stayed out of his way. Jenna kept up with him. She texted Christopher every day to say hello. They met when they went to John's house to visit. So far, Christopher hadn't paid any attention to her. One day, the girl went to the store, and on her way back, she saw Christopher. I yelled hi. He came up to her hi. "Help me carry the bag," she asked him. "Come on," he agreed out of politeness. When they reached the girl's house, she thanked the guy. "Why don't you come over for a visit?" she asked him. "No," was the unequivocal answer. "Let's go and talk, drink tea." "What, are you going to run away from me like this?" she called out to him. Good. He himself at that moment does not know how he agreed, and why he went. Jenna inwardly rejoiced. He's definitely not going anywhere now. Today they had tea and talked. Tomorrow come over after work for dinner. She invited him when she went out to see him off. Well, we'll see. He put on his sneakers, said goodbye, and left. At work, he didn't say anything to John in the morning and went home in the evening. Are you coming over? Jenna texted him. I'm sorry, but I can't make it tonight. Christopher texted her back. I've been working so hard, cooking, it's all for nothing. Even in the message, it was obvious that she was offended. Okay, I'll be there soon. Christopher thought to himself that in addition to having a delicious meal, he would also spend the evening with an interesting person. Yesterday, when they talked, he realized that Jenna was a smart girl, knew a lot of things, and he liked that. Again, they sat in the girl's kitchen and talked. Would you like some wine? She asked him. No beer, he asked in reply. I'll look in a moment. She opened the refrigerator. No, only champagne and wine. She looked at the young man. Okay, let's have wine. He agreed. We can go to the store, Jenna suggested. Would you go with me? Asked her boyfriend. She didn't care what she did, as long as she was near him. Then let's go. They went to the hallway, put on their shoes, and left the apartment. Not half an hour later, the young people were sitting in the room on the couch in front of the TV and drinking beer. Jenna was telling something, and they were laughing. At some point, their faces were so close that the girl couldn't stand it. Let's kiss, she told him. Christopher did not answer anything. He put his arms around the girl, and their lips merged in a kiss. An hour and 2 hours passed, and they kept kissing and kissing. Are you a good kisser? Christopher said to her then. Are you too? She lowered her eyes. Stay. No, not tonight. He looked at his watch and started to get ready to go home. Okay, will you come tomorrow? She asked, but she wasn't hoping for anything. Yes, he nodded. When Christopher walked out of the apartment, Jenna leaned with her back against the door and lit the sea. It was the first time a girl had ever pursued a young man on her own, and she had succeeded. The next day, she got ready, cooked dinner, bought beer, wine. Who knows what he'd want? And the young man came, as promised. Hi. Jenna was very shy. She couldn't even approach him. You've been waiting. He realized by the aroma coming from the kitchen. Yep, she nodded. Tonight went the same way as yesterday. Why don't you stay in tonight? Jenna asked him. You know, you and I have just started hanging out. Let's hang out for a while, smiled Christopher. Okay, agreed the girl, because she didn't want to spoil the already very fragile relationship. The next day, Christopher wrote that he would not be able to come. Jenna tried to ask why, but he never explained anything. By the weekend, she texted that she was going to visit John. To everyone, he told them that he was invited too. They met again and went home together in the evening. And tonight he didn't even have to be persuaded. He stayed with the girl. Of course, they slept in separate rooms. And when Jenna woke up in the morning, she didn't know whether to approach him or not. What to do? Embarrassed, like she was 13 years old, the girl went to the kitchen, made coffee, then she made breakfast. When it was ready, she put it on the coffee table and went to wake up the young man. Hi, everybody. She sat down on the couch where he was sleeping. Good morning. How long has he been wiping his eyes? You should be off to work by now. Jenna knew that guys worked without a day off, so she woke him up. Yeah, I'm getting up now, he said. I made you breakfast. Jenna blushed for some reason. Embarrassed. Thank you. I'll go to the kitchen now. Christopher got up from the couch. He walked down the hall, and Jenna noticed that he was somehow skidding to the right side. He washed his face, had breakfast, told Jenna he would stop by again after work and left. She was happy about it. She couldn't believe that they were actually starting a relationship. The girl got everything ready again. She had the day off today, so there was plenty of time. She waited for Christopher and wondered what they would do tonight. Let's go to the movies. She met him on the doorstep of her apartment. Well, "If you want to have dinner, we'll go," he agreed. And they all did. And after they returned from the theater, sat for a while, shared their impressions of the film, and then went to bed again. For a whole week, Christopher went to Jenna's, stayed with her, but they slept in separate rooms. "Why don't you come to bed with me?" the girl asked him one night. "I don't know. Are you going to name it?" "You don't lie down," he answered. "But I'm calling it tonight," she said, and her cheeks flared again. Good. They were now sitting in the kitchen, and as Christopher got up and walked down the hall, Jenna noticed again that he was skidding to the right. At first, the girl paid no attention to it and didn't say anything to him. But about a month after they started living together, Christopher admitted that his right ear really hurts. Sometimes he even feels like he can't hear it. "Why don't you go to the doctor?" Jenna asked him. "Do you know these doctors? They don't say anything, but they give you prescriptions, and nothing really helps." He waved her off. "Well, at least let them do an exam. Figure out why it's happening," she told him. "No, I'm definitely not going to the doctors," the young man replied. "All right. As you wish," she shrugged. But when after another short time Christopher came home, he told Jenna a terrible story. At work, he wanted to listen to music, but since their workshop was not alone, he put on headphones, and when the music started, Christopher could hear with his left ear, but not with his right. The guy thought it was the headphones, so he took them off, switched them around. But they turned out to be fine. So he plugged his left ear and asked John to say something to him. The young man could see from his lips that his friend was talking, but he couldn't hear what he was saying. "Christopher, how could you? I told you to see a doctor." Jenna was afraid for his health. She called the pay clinic they had in town and wanted to make an appointment to see Laura. But when the receptionist listened to her complaints, she said that it is necessary not to see a lawyer, but a neurologist. "Well, then write me down to a neurologist." She dictated Christopher's first and last name and phone number. When he came home from work in the evening, the girl announced to him that he was not going anywhere tomorrow, but was going to a doctor's appointment. She had already made an appointment for him, and he would be expected there. "Why did you do that? Are you sure I need this?" he said to her then. She answered confidently, and she didn't want any more talk. The next day, Christopher went to the doctor. Jenna was waiting for him at home, worried. He dialed her number and told her that the neurologist had sent him for an MRI, saying that he was 90% sure he had a tumor in his head. Of course, this news really scared the girl. While Christopher was getting home, she called the clinic and made an appointment for an MRI. Naturally, the doctor's words really scared the young man. He agreed to undergo all the procedures after everything was done and the report was received. Christopher and Jenna sat in her kitchen and both were in shock. The MRI showed that Christopher really had a tumor in his head and urgently needed surgery, since the young man's residence registration was in the city where he was born and lived. They went to the hospital there and checked in. The doctor said that the operation could be done under a quota free of charge. Christopher began to take tests, and 3 days before the operation he went to the hospital. Jenna went home. She took all the phone numbers she needed to find out how the surgery went. All day long, Jenna and Christopher talked on the phone. He would tell her what he was doing, how he was being prepped, what tests he was taking, and everything else. The girl couldn't be home alone, so she went to a close friend of hers. "Don't you want to go to a fortune teller?" she asked her. "Why?" "I don't understand, Jenna. Just maybe she could tell you something." The friend saw how worried the girl was and how you wanted to help her, calm her down. "Do you know anyone?" the girl asked her. "Yes, I do." I nodded my head. "Well, okay, come on," agreed Jenna. They arrived at the woman's house. She asked for a picture and started talking. Jenna listened to her and realized it was all true. But at some point, the woman looked up at her and said that Christopher would die during the operation. That was something the girl couldn't accept. She snatched the picture from her and just walked out of the apartment. Ran home. The girlfriend saw all this, followed her. But Jenna didn't want to see anyone right now. She needed to be alone. The day of the surgery, she was on pins and needles. She wouldn't let go of her cell phone. She was pacing from corner to corner, and she didn't know what was going on. And when 800 hours passed, she knew she was going to be out of surgery. By that time, she started calling all the phones, but some were busy, some did not pick up. One number kept getting disconnected. Jenna could not find a place and realized that now it was too late. She could not go there. All night, Jenna did not sleep. Then in the morning, when it was very early, her phone rang. She saw that it was the number of the surgeon who had done Christopher's operation. "Hello," she answered. "Hello, Jenna," he said to her. Yes, she wished he would tell her something faster. "Please come over. I need to talk to you," he replied. "Tell me what's wrong with Christopher." That was the only question she cared about at that moment. "Please come. I'll tell you everything." He sounded like he was pitying her or something. "Can you at least tell me what condition he's in?" She was already crying. "I don't have time for this. When you get here, I'll tell you everything and show you." He hung up. Jenna started looking at the bus schedule. She was packing very fast. She still had 2 hours to go. On the bus, she looked out the window and was afraid that now she was not following a living person. The fortune teller's words that he should die on the operating table came to mind. And somehow it all matched up. The girl arrived at the hospital. She went in to see the surgeon. He was sitting at the table, and he wouldn't look at her. So we told him before the surgery that the facial nerve might be affected. And it was. He also stopped talking. Jenna stood around the table. She knew she was going to pass out. "Doctor, well, speak up. Don't be silent anymore." She couldn't take it. During the 8-hour surgery, he had a stroke on the 5th hour. We had to do a second operation. His heart stopped. "Everything is fine now, but your young man is paralyzed on his right side," the surgeon said. "Where is he? Can I see him? What is his condition?" Jenna began to fumble and realized at some point that that was it. Now and then she remembered nothing. She woke up to the smell of ammonia. The doctor was sitting on the floor with her head in his lap. "Don't worry about it. His condition is stable and serious. He's in intensive care now," the doctor said. "Can I see him?" Jenna said quietly. "Of course, the nurse will show you now," calmly spoke the man. As they walked up to the 4th floor, Jenna thought that maybe Christopher would be uncomfortable that she would see him like this, and he wouldn't want her to watch or something. Her legs were shaking, and her whole body was tense. She was put on booties, a cap, gloves, a robe. And when they brought her in, the tears just rolled out of her eyes. "Talk to him. He can hear you," the nurse told her. And Jenna took his hand and just couldn't get any words out because she knew if she did, she would just start sobbing. Christopher was lying on the bed. He was hooked up to a ventilator. There were also various small tubes sticking out of his arms and everywhere else. After standing there for a moment, she realized she couldn't be here anymore. Out. And then in the corridor she fainted again. "Don't be so worried," the nurse told her. "All right." The girl walked out of the hospital on woozy legs. One thing was for sure, he was alive. And Jenna knew for sure that he would live on. Now every day she would arrive at the hospital in the morning and leave in the evening. At first, while he was in the ICU, Jenna didn't do anything. Just sometimes they'd let her in there. She talked to the person she loved. And then when Christopher was moved to the ICU, Jenna would visit him. She helped him get out of bed, walk the halls. After he was taken off the ventilator, a tube was inserted into his throat. He breathed through it for a while. It was hard, but the girl loved him so much that all the heaviness faded into the background. Christopher could not walk, could not move his arm, and could not speak, because after the tube was taken out of his neck, all the air went out through that hole. You had to cover it with your hand to say anything. Mostly he whispered, but when he tried to say something, it sounded like Darth Vader from Star Wars. He also couldn't close his right eye because his facial nerve was hit. When a month had passed, he was discharged home. Jenna arrived at the hospital. She picked up her favorite person from there. He was in diapers. He couldn't move around on his own. On his legs, his arm wouldn't move at all. His eye could see, but he couldn't blink all the time. The girl brought him home. She knew she had to go to rehab soon. She dropped everything and was only there for him. "Christopher, you and I will be going to rehab soon," she told him. The girl did everything the hospital told her to do. They took pills, gave her some shots. They took a cab to the rehabilitation center, but it did not take them further than the barrier, and Jenna had to carry the young man on her own. She carried him, and they were assigned a room where they had to live together. Every day, Chris Storer was taken to different procedures, and he really felt better. And when they were discharged after 2 weeks, Jenna took all the recommendations of the doctors. She was given a lot of methodical literature, which described different types of massage, facial articulation, and other procedures. She wasn't going to stop with what she was doing now. When they arrived home, they practiced Christopher on a daily basis. They would say different proverbs, say letters to develop the speech apparatus. Afterward, ideally, they would walk on a bench. But since Jenna didn't have a bench at home, she put a ribbon on the floor, and Christopher had to walk on that tape. The girl took him everywhere, back at the rehab center. The doctor who worked with Christopher advised Jenna to get disability. She found out everything. She gathered all the documents, took the young man there, and they got a group. Now, although Christopher did not work, but some money fell on his card every month. In summer, she left her job and got a job in a health center, which was in Sosnovyj Bor, and took Christopher there with her. Fresh air and exercise had a favorable effect on the young man's condition. So a year passed. By this time, Christopher was already walking on his own. They had almost completely developed his arm. If before it was hanging like a whip, now he could move it, but only the hand remained a problem. Also, Christopher started to speak, but only the eye was a problem. "Good morning, my love. How are you feeling?" Jenna asked him every morning. "Good morning. Fine." He hugged her then. When they arrived from the rehab center, Christopher turned to her and told her, as best he could, that he loved her. Those were the most important words she wanted to hear from a young man. Now that things were more or less working out for him, they were sitting in the kitchen, talking about something. And suddenly, we all took Jenna's hand. "Would you marry me?" he asked her. "Of course," she answered, not doubting anything. "Then you'll be the first person I say those words to." He smiled. Jenna was happy. She just didn't know how to put it into words. "Mom, I'm marrying Simeon," called the girl that same night to her. "Why do you need that invalid?" her mother told her. "You don't understand anything. I love him more than anything in the world. I don't need anyone but him," she said. "Jenna, think 100 times about marrying him," her mother warned her. "I don't have to think about it. I've been ready for it for a long time." The girl didn't listen to anyone. Many friends condemned her that she threw all her strength to restore the young man, said that he was not suitable for her and everything else. But she did not listen to anyone. And when they decided to make a wedding, they just applied. And on the appointed day they came, signed, congratulated each other, and the two of them went to celebrate it all. "I love you very much," pressed Jenna against him. She was ready to be always by his side and never go anywhere. "And you are the love of my life," he told her. They were happy until Jenna got pregnant. When she informed Christopher about it, he was overjoyed with the news. As long as she was working, she was fine. But when she went on maternity leave, and there was practically no income at all, the family began a small scandal. The pension that Christopher received was not enough for anything at all, and it needed a lot. "Are you not going to do anything?" the girl asked her husband. "What do you want me to do?" he asked in reply. "I don't know. You're a man, can't you think of anything?" She was almost crying. "You see, I can't." He was lying on the couch. "Can I? My stomach's churning, and I have to do something and earn money somewhere." The girl was crying. After Jenna gave birth, it was decided that she would go to work and Christopher would stay home with the baby. How can you trust him with a small child? I told her mother off. "Mom, he's a father. He understands everything and knows what to do. Especially he already had a little daughter," said the girl to the woman. "I don't know. If something happens, then blame yourself. You can't fix anything," she told her. "All right, moms, that's enough. I have my own head on my shoulders." Lately, Jenna had become very irritable. Not only did she have a hormonal breakdown, she had to run home every 2 o'clock to feed the baby. Work was taking longer than usual. Christopher didn't just sit at home either. When Emily was still a baby, after Jenna fed her, she would just go to bed. And now that she was 5 months old, she needed to be held in her arms, facing forward all the time. The little girl was realizing the world. Why were the dishes not washed at home again? She'd come in irritated from work. "I'm with the baby all day." "What dishes?" Christopher told her. "And I'm tired all day at work. I'm just trying to make sure there's some income in the house," Jenna yelled at him. It was clear to both of them that they were both tired, but there was no way they could communicate that to each other. Soon after that, when Emily started kindergarten, Christopher would take her in the morning and bring her back in the evening. Yeah, he made Jenna's life easier, but she wasn't idle either. Sometimes she worked Monday through Friday. She worked weekends so she could get double pay, which meant a bigger paycheck. "Why are you sitting on your phone again?" she said to herself. "I can't even sit on my phone anymore." I looked at her. "I don't know. I can't do it anymore. I'm tired of this life. All my nerves are shot," Jenna replied. She would go to the bathroom, close herself up, and sit there, sometimes crying. She really didn't know what to do. Soon Christopher figured out a way for them to make money from the comfort of their own home. They began to make it all a reality. "I'm off to work in the morning," Jenna said. Christopher was taking his daughter to daycare. Jenna was on her way to work, and now she was doing what Christopher had come up with and working in parallel. Money began to appear in the family. Along with it, expensive appliances, computer, TV, laptop, and everything else. The family could afford more now, and Jenna seemed to settle down. But there was more and more work to do. And now it wasn't enough that she was working hard during the day and moonlighting, but there were still things to do at night. "I can't take it anymore. I'll go crazy soon." She was lying next to her husband. He didn't seem to have any problems at all. He slept well at night. He could do it during the day. One day, Jenna received a call from the employment center and was told that one of the organizations required a worker on a quota for a place. Of course, she grasped this information as a straw. Again, she gathered all the documents, came home. "Christopher, I found you a job. Here's the paperwork. Go apply." She handed him a file of papers. Yes, perhaps with this the girl stressed her husband, but she did not know how to do otherwise. All people lived like this. Yes, they pay pennies there. He told her. So what? It's a long service. They'd been together for a few years, and Jenna didn't understand why things had changed so much and why do I need seniority. Christopher didn't understand. All people work. Why do you think you're so special? The girl didn't get it. Now that her daughter was older, Christopher had to do something with her. But on the weekends, they had to take Emily to a singing class, and I had to do something to keep her entertained. Jenna was torn. She cooked at home. Then she'd go out with her daughter, and then she had to go to work. I can't. She came home and lay down on the couch. Get some rest, Christopher said calmly. Good for you to talk. What are we going to eat? She grinned. We can live without frills. He was sure of his words. Lately, Jenna realized that they had drifted apart. She dialed her friend's number. Hi, she told her. Come and visit. After the greeting, her friend called her. I will. She packed up the department and they left the house together. While visiting, the girl could exhale a little. In the back of her mind, she remembered that she had feelings for Christopher, and as strong as before. But housework, work, and everything else, so exhausting that she wanted nothing more. "Did you go through the store?" a friend was wondering. "Sure." Displayed Jenna a bottle of wine on the table. "That's good. We'll rest now," said the girlfriend. Here, visiting lapdog. Jenna could relax. She was not thinking about anything. The daughter was busy with her friend's daughter. They were about the same age. And the girls were sitting in the kitchen talking. "You look very tired," Alina said. "I know that myself." Jenna realized that if before she always had her nails painted, eyes painted, hair styled, then now she didn't care about that. A ponytail on her head, nothing at all on her hands. "Go on vacation," suggested Alenka. "I can't," shook her head Jenna. They could sit up till late at night. And then Jenna and her daughter would drive home. Christopher was already asleep. She developed, washed her face, and lay down next to him. "Where was it yesterday?" he asked in the morning. "You know Elena didn't have a rash. Now I had a headache." "How do I know all this?" Christopher answered it all. "That's it. I don't want to talk anymore," wrinkled Jenna. She had finally poured boiling water into her mug and was now trying to take a sip of the scalding drink. "What else don't you want?" He was kind of cocky. "Christopher, please. I'll be right out, doing the dishes and vacuuming." She asked him, "What if I don't feel like it?" He wasn't acting like he always does. "You know, when you needed help, I did everything, whether I wanted to or not." She would never have told him that. But now he's really pissed her off. "And nobody asked you to." Those were the most hurtful words Christopher ever said to his wife. "Well, you didn't say no once." She came over because she felt like she might cry. "Did you misunderstand?" Apparently, he realized he said the wrong thing. And now he was trying to get out of it. "I'm going to work. Can you feed Emily when she wakes up?" She turned around and pretended to be busy. "Will you be long?" Christopher asked her as he followed Jenna down the hall. "I don't know," she shrugged. Good, he wanted to kiss her. But Jenna was already out. She couldn't show anyone her weakness. No, she's strong. She's got a baby. There's a mom to help. And there's Christopher, who has a hard time too. She wiped her tears, exhaled, and moved on. Jenna arrived at work. There was a lot to do. Today was a small children's party. The script was ready. It was left to hide the tasks that were meant for the kids. Jenna did everything. She knew that in 3 o'clock it would be over. When the kids arrived, Jenna was already in costume. She was smiling, taking everyone along with her. It was a lot of fun. The kids were laughing. They ran, played, and danced. At the very end, Jenna put on a show for the kids, after which everyone started to disperse, and the presenters cleaned up what was left after the party. But that was it. And now home. She looked around the room and went to change. She went up to her office, changed, and was ready to go out, while she said goodbye to the watchman who had just come in. Jack asked tiredly, "Aha, but that's okay," smiled Jenna. "Okay, have a happy journey so far." He looked and smiled. "Thank you." It was nice to have a lot of people respecting her around here. She went outside, walked down the porch, and went to the gate. "Excuse me," she heard from across the parking lot. Yes, she turned and saw a very handsome man heading in her direction. She'd seen him at the party today. He was picking up one of the kids. "I'm sorry to be like this, but I didn't know how to meet you," he told her. Why would you want to meet me? She didn't understand a thing. She liked him. He didn't hide it. Good. Why don't you drive me home? Jenna looked at the car from which the stranger had gotten out a few minutes ago. She didn't really want to take public transportation. Of course, gladly, he took the bags from her hands and led her to Robert's car. He got behind the wheel. Jenna looked at him. A beautiful name, just like you. He tried to compliment her. Everyone, let's go already. She sighed. Maybe we can stop for a meal on the way. Are you tired from work? I guess I offered my wife. Good. Jenna at that moment does not know why she agreed, because her husband and daughter were waiting for her at home. Wow. And I thought you would refuse me. Robert was surprised and smiled. But I agreed. The girl laughed. That's good. They stopped near a small restaurant. They went in. Robert ordered something. Jenna couldn't decide for a long time. She hadn't eaten anything since this morning, so now she wanted everything. Finally, she did it. Now they both waited for the order to arrive. Silent. How about some wine? Robert suggested. You're driving, aren't you? She was surprised. I'm here for you to relax, he explained. I could use a glass, agreed Jenna. Then Robert made a sign to the waiter. He came over and took the order. I'm so uncomfortable sitting here with you, Jenna said. And for some reason I felt ashamed of myself. Why? He didn't understand. My husband and child are waiting for me at home, and I'm sitting here with another man, drinking wine. She smiled. What's the big deal? I'm just here with a good friend to unwind a little. Of course, that wasn't true at all. Who's at your house? She asked the question because it had been plaguing her since she had met Robert today. Cat, he shrugged. I don't know what else to say. Isn't there a wife? She asked in complete seriousness. What makes you think I have one? Robert didn't understand. What do you mean? Whose baby did you pick up today? She admitted to him that she'd seen it. It's his nephew, his sister's son, he reassured her. At that moment their order was brought to them. They started to eat. Either Jenna had not eaten in a long time, or the food here was simply divine. She was alive, and at this point she let out a groan, rolled her eyes. Do you always eat like this? Robert laughed. Oh, sorry. The girl realized what she had done wrong. No, it's nice to look at it. He smiled. You never told me why you came up to me. They knew each other, just a little. But Jenna felt with him as if she had known him for a long time. What do you mean you didn't tell me because you liked it? Me and the guys were at your place once, and I noticed you back then. He said that and stopped smiling. What did this girl notice so sadly? A few sips of wine on an empty stomach had done the trick. She was relaxed and open-mouthed. You have a husband, kids, and I wanted us to make something work, he told her. What's wrong with you? She's tense. No, it's okay. We'll be friends. He reached out and touched her. After they ate, Robert paid and they went to the car. Should we go for another drive? He asked Jenna. No, I have to go home. She shook her head. Okay, can I have your cell phone? He asked and glanced at the girl. Yes, she answered calmly. They drove to the house where Jenna lived. She got out of the car. All right, promised his wife, and did not leave while on stage, walked into the driveway. It was nice to have someone else paying attention to her. The girl went into the house. Everything was the same there. No one had done anything. Christopher was lying on the couch again. As usual, she dropped her things and walked to the kitchen. Emily was sitting at the table drawing something. I'm hungry, she said, now turned Jenna to the stove, and thought to herself that her husband could at least do something. After she got everything done, fed the baby and bought her up and put her to bed. She wanted to talk to Christopher, walked into the room. Have you been drinking on the job? He asked, and he didn't take his eyes off the screen of his phone. Stopped at a restaurant afterward to eat. Had a glass, didn't make a deal. What, she wasn't alone? That's all. Did you sit there alone? Christopher asked. Yes, that's all he needed to know. Okay, good night. He turned sideways. Aren't we going to talk? She was in shock. Nothing. He kept staring at his phone. Okay. She got up and went to her daughter's house. It was frustrating to the point of tears. Why does everything have to be like this? She tries her best to make sure everything at home is good. And nobody appreciates it. Everything is taken for granted. Jenna was back at work this morning. Robert had texted her to say good morning. She smiled and replied to him. A correspondence started between them. It seemed to the girl that it distracted her a lot from everyday life. "I will come tonight," wrote Robert on Friday. "Good," she replied to him. Jenna knew her husband would be picking up her daughter from daycare, and she was going to Neil today anyway. So it was okay to ride for a couple hours. She waited for him at the gate. Robert pulled up. Jenna got into the car and said hello to him once again. "Where are we going?" the young man asked. "I don't know. Maybe the same restaurant where we were the first time," she suggested. Well, he didn't care as long as with her they had already learned a lot about each other during the week-long correspondence. Now they had some common topics to talk about. "How are you?" Robert started with the usual question. "Fine," Jenna shrugged. Nothing had changed in her life. "I see. You don't want to talk." He looked at the girl. "Order me some wine," she asked. Just like last time, Robert showed the waiter that he needed to come over. He did as the girl asked. They sat there, smiling at each other. Robert took Jenna's hand. "Don't." She pulled it away. "Why?" "I can see you're not feeling well," he said. What didn't she realize? Should we drop everything and change things for the better? He asked her. "No. What are you, Christopher?" She began to tell how they met, how they found out about the disease, and how she nursed him back to health. "You're like Mother Teresa." He was serious. "It's okay," Jenna said sadly. "Yeah, I see they brought their order. Just like last time. It was delicious." Robert was saying something, telling about his work, making the girl laugh. It was nice to be with this man. It took her mind off everything that had been happening to her lately. "Let's go to my place," asked Jenna Robert. "No," she said firmly then. "Where to?" He didn't want to let her go. "Home. Come on, I'll show you." She got up from the table. Great. He was glad Jenna wasn't going anywhere. Did the girl say where to go today? It was on the outskirts of town. When they were there, Robert marveled at how beautiful it was here. A highway followed by a field, and then the horizon. It all blended together. "Do you realize why I brought you here?" she asked. "Yes, it's beautiful," he agreed with her. They just sat in the car and looked into the distance. Afterwards, Jenna asked him to drive her home. Robert turned to her, ran his hand over her cheek, leaned in, wanted to kiss her. "No," she turned away. I don't understand why he was looking at someone he liked. "I have a husband. I love him," the girl said. "I see," sighed the young man. "Let's go then." She waited for him to start the engine. "You know, I can see you're not feeling well," he said softly. "Robert, don't ruin the relationship we have," Jenna asked him. "Okay. I'm sorry." He started the car and they drove off. "I'm home." She went into the apartment. No one answered. Jenna walked over to her daughter, stroked her head, kissed her, asked if she was hungry. After Emily said that she and Daddy had eaten, Jenna headed into the other room where Christopher was lying on the couch again. He was with his tablet today. "Is that okay?" she asked. "What are you talking about?" He didn't understand. "I'm at work all day and you haven't gone anywhere," the girl said. She looked at her husband and realized that there was a problem in their family and it had to be solved somehow. She didn't want to leave him because she loved something from me. "Do you want to?" he asked. I sat down to talk. Jenna leaned over to him and kissed him. "Have you been drinking again?" He heard the smell from her. "Look, if things were good in my family, would I be doing this?" She remembered how good things used to be. "Are you trying to accuse me of something now?" He turned around. "No," she shook her head. "Then what?" He looked at her with one eye. "Let's go to a psychologist," Jenna suggested. "I don't need any psychologist." He sounded sure of it. "I do." I was ashamed to admit it, but it was true. "Well, go for it." It was obvious he didn't want to talk to Jenna anymore. She went into the kitchen. She wanted to cry, but she knew it wouldn't help her. The next day, when the girl came to work, she saw that there were flowers on the table. "Who brought these?" was surprised Jenna. "I don't know. The watchman brought them," he said. "What's for you?" The coworkers answered. "Okay, thanks. Nice." She took a photo and sent it to Robert. "Your handiwork." She captioned the photo. "What did you want to make you feel good in the morning?" "Moody," he told her. "Thank you." Now she sent it to him. In the evening, he waited for her again. "Why are you doing this? Apart from being friends, you and I can't be anything else." She said it with confidence. "Let's go. I'll just drive you home." He opened the door for her. Jenna got in. They drove off. They didn't talk about anything today. When they got to the driveway, she wanted to get out, but Robert took her hand. "Tell me, do you really love him or do you just feel sorry for him?" he asked the girl. "What kind of question is that?" She put her foot out into the street, and her hand Robert held it that way. "Answer," he waited. "If you don't let go now, we won't socialize at all anymore," she told him. Sorry, he let her go, and Jenna walked quickly toward the entryway. At home, everything was the same. For a long time, nothing had changed at all. Almost every day, Robert would come over to Jenna's house, but she wouldn't let him do anything. She just hung out with him. It was relaxed and fun and interesting. "Are you working again today?" One day on his day off, Christopher came up to his wife. "Probably haven't called yet," Jenna said. Christopher came to her, hugged her. Jenna immediately remembered how tender he was and what they had before. "Maybe we could go out," she suggested. "No, I don't feel like going out." He spoke in her ear. "Why does it like this?" Jenna asked. "I don't know." He shrugged his shoulders. "Let's go on vacation. I'll buy the vouchers. We'll take a vacation without Emily," Jenna suggested again. "Good." Christopher was even happier. "Then I'll look for a vacation tomorrow," Jenna smiled. She turned and kissed Christopher. Tonight they slept together. Everything was fine. The next day, he wished his wife good morning and made coffee. "Thank you." She was home for the second day in a row in the last 6 months. No one had called her in to work. Jenna sat down at the computer to search for travel vouchers. She sat for a long time, choosing. Sometimes Christopher came up to her, asking questions, offering advice. When Jenna had everything done, all that was left was to pay. She did that. The flight was a week away. Now she had to talk to the principal about taking a short vacation. "Are you ready?" She had packed all her bags, Emily, taken to her mom's house, and was now ready for anything. She hadn't spoken to Robert in a week. He had won her over with texts and calls. But Jenna didn't want to pay attention to that. Sure enough, Christopher was smiling. The next day, the couple hailed a cab. They drove to the airport. In the car, Christopher held Jenna's hand, and afterward they took their bags and went to check in. Then a few hours on the airplane, and now they were almost near the sea. Their hotel stood near the sea itself. Now they were heading there. When they got into the room, they were amazed at the view from the window. On the first day, they went to the beach, but only to scout the situation. Everything was gorgeous. At first, Christopher went everywhere with Jenna, but after a couple days, he got carried away with his tablet again and didn't want to go anywhere. "Are you really not interested in anything?" Jenna asked him. "Why go out every day?" He didn't understand, but we could lie at home. They started fighting again. And what he didn't understand her grievances. Nothing, so Jenna turned around and walked away. "Where are you going?" Ask after Christopher. "To the sea. I want to be alone." And found. And cried again. Why does she always have to be alone? He's never around. Always, whatever difficulties or joys there were in life. The girl was alone with it all. It was at this point that Jenna decided to text Robert to say hi. She typed the message. "I thought you weren't going to write anymore," he replied after a second. Sorry, she didn't know what else to write. "I totally understand." "When are you coming back?" he asked. "How do you know?" She was curious. "I was at your work. They said you were on vacation," Robert admitted. "I see." After a week, she didn't keep anything from him. "Can I hope to see you again?" Robert asked her. Probably yes. She wasn't sure, but for some reason she wanted to. Good. Then I look forward to your return, he wrote. Great. Bye. She wrote and looked out at the sea blue in the distance. It was so beautiful. Jenna relaxed a little. Right now, she was wishing she had brought Emily with her. She would be running around here now. She would have loved it for sure. The rest of the week went well, but that was it for Jenna. Christopher went to the sea a couple more times and spent the rest of the time in the hotel on the bed. We're flying home tomorrow. Let's at least spend tonight together. Jenna asked her husband, Are we not together? It became strange to him, as if yes, but as if not. She approached him. Jenna, understand, I get tired quickly, and I just don't want to go anywhere. He took her hand. I understand, but the sea air is good for you, especially for you. She leaned over and kissed him. So it gets here, in the room. Christopher pointed to the open window. Yes, but that's not it at all. She looked where he was pointing. Jenna finally managed to convince her husband to take her to the restaurant. He sat, ate, didn't talk about anything. Beautiful music came on. Let's dance, Jenna called him. No, it's not my thing. He said no. Okay. Jenna realized she felt like crying again. They went home. The next day, they had to fly home. Jenna bought some souvenirs. The bags were packed. They were ready to go. The airplane was silent. In the car, too. They were finally home. I'll pick up Lee on the way. Wanted Jenna to see her friend and cry, but only she came out of the house. She spotted Robert's car and pulled up. What are you doing here? She asked him. You don't know. He looked at her and smiled. I see. She looked up at her windows. And what do you understand? He took her hand and pulled her to him. Wait. She walked around the car and sat in the front seat. And what next? He was getting curious. Let's go, she asked. Robert complied with her request. They drove off again where it had once been so beautiful. Do you mind? He turned to the girl. No, not even in favor. She smiled. Why does she have such a good relationship with this man? Willing to do a lot of things for her, and the husband she loves so much is willing to do nothing. Tell me. They stopped, and Robert turned to her. What is there to tell? We've been on vacation for so many days, and he hasn't even left the room. Jenna said indignantly, Let's go to my place. He touched her chin. Let's go. She nodded no way. He quickly started the car. They drove off. On the way, Emily called her mom and told her that they were having problems with Christopher. She's coming over tomorrow. And I warned you. Her mom reminded her of what she said before the wedding. Oh, don't start, please, asked her daughter. Okay, we'll wait for tomorrow, the woman said and hung up. Is everything okay? Asked the man behind the wheel. Yes, nodded Jenna. She had made up her mind today that she would go with him and try to build a completely different relationship, but she didn't know if she could do it or not. They arrived and went up to Robert's apartment. He immediately set up a table, got some wine, some appetizers. He took a beer from the fridge himself. What were you getting ready? It made the girl laugh. No, but it was always there just in case. He smiled, opened his wine, filled his glass, then got himself a beer. Thank you for your support. She toasted okay, and thank you for everything. He took a small sip. For what? She didn't understand. For what you are. He reached for her, wanting to kiss her. Jenna was ready for it. She even closed her eyes. But then she pictured Christopher, remembered how much she loved him, and what they had. No, I can't. She turned away and opened her eyes. Here we go, Robert sighed. I'm sorry, I can't. She stood up. Where are you going? The landlord didn't understand. I have to go home. She went into the hallway. Jenna, wait. He followed her. No, I'm sorry for all the nerve. Is there something you're hoping for? But I love my husband, and I need to go home, she said. All right. He didn't try to talk her out of it. Jenna left his apartment. She went home reluctantly. She knew there was nothing new waiting for her there, but she went anyway. She wanted to talk to her husband. Maybe now he would hear her and understand. What if she told him about Robert? Tell him a young man was hitting on her. I wonder what his reaction would be. She asked herself. Even though Robert had offered to drive her, she hadn't accepted. She needed to take a walk to think. At that moment, Mom texted. She told her to go to them if things were bad. Or maybe she really should go to her mom's. She stopped, but after that she waved her head and went home, even though she didn't really want to. I opened the door at home and she walked in. But when she turned around, I froze with surprise. There was nothing in the apartment. She could see that from the hallway. The TV, computer, laptop, all the appliances from the kitchen, anything of any value was missing. Jenna's first thought was that the apartment had been burglarized. She rushed to the wall, opened the closet where there was a jewelry box and money. What it was, she couldn't believe her eyes. The rings, earrings, and bracelets were there, but the money was missing. Clearly, if it had been thieves, they would have taken everything. But here she walked further, saw that there were no clothes in the closet, went to the nightstand. There were no papers either. She sat down on the couch and cried. Why did he do this to me? I never spared anything for him. I loved him. And he sobbed her to tears. Jenna dialed Christopher's number. He had blacklisted her. She tried to text him on social media. He blocked her there too. After that, the girl called her mom and told her everything. She went to the kitchen, opened the drawer where the medicine cabinet was. She took out a sedative and drank it. She noticed a piece of paper on the table. Walked over, smirked. It was a letter from him. In it he wrote that he loved her and thanked her for everything she'd done for him. But he realized he needed to leave. Also talked about blocking her so she wouldn't push pity in return. Jenna grinned. There was a knock on the door. She went to open it. Standing on the doorstep was Robert. What are you doing here? She was stunned. I realize that if I didn't catch up with you now, I'd lose you forever, he told her. Robert, he's gone. She showed him the empty apartment. What a bastard. His fists clenched. That's enough. She led her guest into the kitchen. They sat down at the table. Jenna poured tea, showed Robert what the man she loved so much and was willing to die herself to save him had written to her. I see. He read it. Pack your bags. I don't get it. She looked at him with red eyes. Let's go to my place. He wasn't asking now, he was affirming. I didn't even, she said. He walked up to her and started kissing her. It was so unexpected that Jenna responded. There would be no objection. He took the bag and started putting some of her things in it. Let me do it. She took it from him. Great, Robert said. Emily stopped in the hallway. Jenna, just like you wanted, we'll pick her up tomorrow. He put his arm around her shoulders and led her outside. You're walking. The girl was surprised. She'd never seen him without a car. I had a beer, he reminded her. They came to his house. He poured her wine and sat her in an armchair. Look, you need to calm down. I don't want things to work out between you and me. You can stay with me for a while. We'll pick up your daughter tomorrow, and I'll help you with everything. Now he's acting like Jenna with Christopher. Thank you for everything. She clung to him from the soothing wine and tears. Jenna quickly boiled it down. Robert carried her to the bed, covered her with a plaid, and closed the door behind him. He really liked her and would do anything to make sure she reciprocated him. The next day, Jenna did not go to work. She said she had a family emergency. She went to her mom's house, who worked 2 and 2, and it was her day off. Hi. She came into the apartment. Hello, her mom hugged her. And Jenna started crying again. No need to shed tears, so it was meant to be. In fact, the woman was angry, but she couldn't say anything bad right now. Knew her daughter would still be on his side. They went into the kitchen. They sat there talking for a long time. You know who helped me? Jenna asked her mom. No, of course not. She looked at her surprised. I have an acquaintance whom I think it's today we'll meet, said the girl. Just acquaintances, or her mother looked at her enigmatically. Mom just smiled for now. Jenna, It makes me happy that you are smiling." They hugged each other again. In the evening, Jenna went to daycare, picked up her daughter, and together they drove to Robert's house. And then they went with him to Mom's to keep her informed. "Hello." Robert entered the apartment and gave the woman flowers. "Come in," she invited him in. When everyone met and sat down at the table, a casual conversation began. "You know how much I love your daughter, and if it were up to me, I'd propose to her today," Robert said. "But that's okay. Now they'll divorce. And go ahead." Green light. The woman smiled. Jenna was putting Emily to bed at that moment. She came back, only to hear the end of the conversation. "They married me without me," she smiled. "Come back, daughter. And I advise you not to ignore Robert. You can see at once that this is a good man," Mom began to say. "Calm down. My husband left me yesterday. And you're already giving me a new one," Jenna said sternly. "Why is he?" That hurt Robert. "Okay, don't fight. Time will sort things out," said the wise woman. "That's right." Today Robert said goodbye to Jenna, went home. The girl went back to work. She could not think about Simeon. As soon as she started to do so, tears came to her eyes. "Why do you need him?" "Forget it. Go and file for divorce," colleagues used to say. Robert came every night. He met the girl, gave flowers, until he calmed down and made no attempts to get closer. A month passed. Jenna kept waiting to see if he would call or write, but Christopher never showed up. Under pressure from her mom and friends, she filed for divorce. In a month, she was to be a free woman. Emily suffered the most. She cried just like her mom when she found out her dad had left. Everything would be all right. Resolved Jenna that she would not cry anymore. Ino looked at her daughter and hugged her. They stayed at Jenna's mother's house for a while longer, but all the time it could not last. And at some point the girl asked Robert to take her home. He did everything she asked. He has the most beloved woman. A month later, her mom called, asked how she was doing. And then she said she was expecting her for a visit tonight. "So give me the weekend." Jenna was surprised, because today was Wednesday. "No, I need you to come today." Mother insisted. "Okay." The girl didn't understand the urgency. She picked Emily up from daycare and drove to her mother's house. When she arrived, it was business as usual. "Mom, what was the urgency?" she wanted to know. "Come in," she called her into the room. Wow. Jenna went there and saw a gorgeous table that was set and stood in the middle. "Why are you surprised?" Sat down on the table, the woman sat down. I don't know what kind of celebration she showed with her eyes at everything that was here. You'll find out soon enough. At that moment there was a knock on the door. Mother went to open it. On the threshold stood Robert. He was wearing a suit and carrying flowers. Jenna immediately understood everything. She smiled. Robert walked up to her, looked at the woman and the girl who were standing there. "Jenna, will you be my wife?" He held out a box to her. "I don't even know." She looked at everyone. "Mommy, say yes." Her daughter held up her finger. You'd think she was looking at the man across the table. "You first before the answer, and then think as much as you want," spoke Robert. "Okay, I'll do it." She was angry with paint and took the flowers and the box. "You made the right choice." Kissed her. Robert kissed her. So now to the table. The mother was happy with the way things turned out. They sat and talked, and then Robert asked her to come with him. "Emily, are you staying here?" Her grandmother asked her. Yes, she nodded and looked at her mother. "Don't you think it's going too fast?" Jenna asked Robert when they were already outside. "It's okay. I love you very much." He was bringing her over to his place. "I can't tell you the same thing yet," the girl admitted. "I don't have to yet," he smiled. "Thank you." She pressed herself against him. Tonight, when they arrived at the man's apartment, he was finally able to kiss her. Jenna was smiling, and Robert could see that he could make her happy. "I have to go to work tomorrow," she told him and looked at her watch. "Stop thinking about it already." He kissed her again. And then the wedding preparations began. Robert wanted not just a wedding. He wanted a wedding, and the most beautiful one. For his beloved Robert dreamed of her becoming a princess. "What are you thinking?" Jenna saw that he was often pensive. "Did he tell you the truth? And what did you have in mind?" She began to wonder. "Nothing." He winked at his future wife. "Okay, it's always secrets." She was really happy. And now she couldn't think about the man who'd betrayed her. The day of the wedding had arrived. Jenna was wearing a beautiful dress. Next to her stood the groom. He was also very handsome. Guests, relatives, and friends congratulated. Everyone wished only happiness and great love. "Daughter, don't doubt him. He'll be a great husband and father." "Mommy, I'm happy for you," Emily said to her. "Thank you, family." Jenna smiled and hugged them. "And you dare to be unhappy? And stop reminiscing about the past," threatened the woman with a finger. "Good," she nodded. They arrived home in the evening. It wasn't any easier with them today either. "Are you really so perfect?" Did the wife look at her husband? Naturally, she didn't. "Waited this long to start bullying you now?" He laughed. She pounded him in the chest with her fist. "You have no idea how much I love you." He pulled her to him for the second time that evening. "Do I love you?" She spoke softly. "What? What did you say?" "Say it again." He looked at her. "I love you." She wasn't looking at him. "Jesus, Jenna, we're gonna be the happiest couple ever." Robert started kissing her. "Thank you." She closed her eyes, and it seemed like she was the happiest person on earth. "Can you promise me something?" he asked his wife. "Sure." She looked up at him. "Stop being strong. I'll do anything for you." He pushed her a little away from him and was now looking straight into her eyes. "I don't know how to do that." She remembered what she had done before. "But you'll learn, promise." Didn't let go of her hands. "I'll do my best." She nodded, but didn't take her eyes away. "Good. I believe you. You're my love forever. And I swear to you that you'll be like a stone wall behind me." He pulled her to him again. "Thank you." With one lip, the girl said. She believed that happiness might be smiling upon her now.